Welcome back to Rav Pinson's podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern man. This episode was sponsored by our podcast team, in honor of a sweet, happy, and healthy new year for all our listeners. Today's episode is a Rosh Hashanah edition Q&A, and the fourth in our Q&A series.
All right, our first question today is, what is the significance of blowing a shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Moreover, why 100 blasts as opposed to 30, or why not 101? Why is it that this sound in that quantity plays such a powerful role in cultivating our new year?
Okay, that's obviously a very big question about Rosh Hashanah.
Yes.
So we have to understand a little bit how this works. So there's the reason for the 100 sounds. There's like a technical reason, which is the halachic reason. And that's a little bit complicated, but I don't want to get into the whole details of it. But basically, the Torah speaks about the blowing of a Truah, Yom Truah Yilachem, the day of Truah should be for you on Rosh Hashanah. And the word Truah means a sound of a type of sound that's created through a shofar. And it says it 3 times. With Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it says it 3 times. And therefore, the sages say that means that we have to blow this sound 3 times. This broken sound of a Truah. So the original idea is to blow it 3 times. The sages also say, the sages tell us in the Talmud, that every sound of the Truah, which is like this broken sound, has to have a tekiah before and a tekiah afterwards, which is a blast before and a blast afterwards. So in total, that becomes 9 sounds. Okay, so you have 9 sounds. The problem is that the sound actually of the Truah, which is a broken sound, there was different customs of how that sound sounded. Was it broken into tiny little short bursts of sounds, or were they longer bursts of cryings? One was classically called a Shvarim, which is a broken sound, which is 3 shorter sounds, or a Truah, which is 9 smaller sounds. And there were 3 different customs there. I know this is technical. One custom was that you blew the Shvarim sound, which is 3 smaller sounds. So you blew a tekiah, a blast, 3 small sounds, a blast, and you did it 3 times. One was that you blew a tekiah, a blast, and a Truah sound, which is 9 little smaller sounds, and then a tekiah. So blast, 9 small sounds, and a blast. A third custom was that you did both, a Shvarim and a Truah. And it came a certain period in time, the time of Rabbi Avua, which is a time when, after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, after the destruction of the temple, and certainly after the time when Jews began to be dispersed throughout the world. So Rav Avua was set up and established that all communities should do all 3 practices. So like this, there'll be a consistency of practice. So the total number, instead of being 9, if you add all those other 2, it turns out into 30 sounds. That's how we get the original 30 sounds of the shofar. Okay, so from 3 to 9 to 30, that's how it developed. And in that itself, there's also different variations of that, of when we blow these 30 sounds. Do we blow them before the prayers? Do we blow them during the prayer, during the silent prayer? Do we blow it during the repetition of the prayers? Then you have a total of 90. Then at the end of the conclusion, you end up coming up with 100 sounds. That's like the technical, halachic, law-based reason for that. But there's a deeper reason for the 100 sounds, which is also brought down it's actually brought down in the Medrash, in the classical interpretations of the rabbis. The rabbis say, the sages say, a conceptual idea that when a mother is about to give birth, when there's a birth about to happen, so there's the pangs of labor, there's the pain of the release of the child, and a mother, and this is a metaphor also for all types of release, for all types of creativity. When something's about to be released, everything that has to be released before there's like this expansion of release, whether it's music or art or creativity, any form of release of creativity, there's a tzimtzum, which is a contraction. There's a state of like concealment or contraction and like sort of like a darkness almost, where you're contracting in order to release something. And in the contraction, which is the tzimtzum, the contraction, the withdrawal and the contraction. So the rabbis, the sages imagine this as 99 sounds of the mother or the creative about to create something, the pain of trying to release. So it's the process of getting, every cry is one step further for the release of the child, for the baby, for the creativity. And then the 100th sound represents the cry when the child is actually released. That's like a euphoric sound of release. So there's a 99 sounds of the pain of the process of being released. And the 100th sound, that's why the final sound of the shofar is the sound of a tekiah d'olah, which is a great loud sound, which is a triumphant sound. The sound of finally that the baby has been released. So the process of birthing this new year is birthing this new year means that there's a birth of self in the new year, which means that the old self, in comparison to the new self that will be born in this coming year, the world that we will live in this coming year will be a radical new me, a new birth of self. So in the process of the birthing of self, we go through the same idea of the 99 cries of about to be born, which is almost a pain of knowing of, obviously I'm a male, so I can't exactly explain this, but we'll understand this in terms of creativity. You have an idea that you're about to release, but it's not coming out. It's not, and there's a lot of angst and a lot of anxiety that you need to release it. That's like the 99 sound. And then the final push is where the sound is the baby is the child, the music, whatever is being released. The creativity is actually is released. That's the euphoric sound. So there's the pain of trying to get it out, and then you finally get it out. So the process of the birthing of self parallels the same idea. So therefore, we take a shofar, and a shofar has a lot of different imagery. That the word shofar is also connected to shifra, shapaperes, and vlad, when it talks about the wet nurses that the birthing nurses that helped the people of Israel that Klaus will be birthed in Egypt. One of the names was Shifra. Shifra means because shapaperes and vlad, it beautifies the child. So shofar is connected to this birthing agent, this that helps the allowance of birth. And the shofar itself, if you look at the actual structure of the shofar itself represents a birth canal. So it starts off mina meitzar, from a constricted place, which is literally where you put your mouth. So it's a smaller space, and then it expands slowly and it expands outwardly, and the sound comes from the place of the expansive part of the shofar. That's the birth from the canal, from the smaller space opening up into the bigger space. So much so, this is actually not only a technical reason that we blow the shofar that way, because it's easier to blow from the smaller space to the bigger space, but according to the Yerushalmi, to the Jerusalem Talmud, if you flip it around and you blow from the wider space, you blow the shofar, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Technically, if you get a sound out from the other direction, you didn't fulfill your obligation, because the idea of the shofar is that it has to come from that space. It has to come from the constricted place, and then the release finally into the larger space. This is what we say on Rosh Hashanah. We say the idea of, we continuously pray and say these words, Hayom Harasolam. Today is the pregnancy of the world. The world is pregnant with the possibility of birthing itself, and we are in the possibility of birthing itself. But the Avudram and Tzaddik Yalar, others say that the word Harasolam, the idea of pregnancy, also can refer to birth. That Hayom Harasolam, today is the birthday of the world. Today there is a birthing of the creation. Therefore, we blow. Remember, we talked in the beginning. We said that there were 9 sounds. That the 9 sounds, the 9 main sounds, right? 3 times with the tekiah and before and after. So the 9, according to the Sefer Keach and sort of the early commentaries, say that the 9 corresponds to the 9 months of pregnancy. So there's 9 months of pregnancy. That's why you also say 9 verses in the verses that we speak about, Machas, Harnas, and Shofars, what we speak about in the prayers, the idea of the 9 months of pregnancy, and then finally there's the release. So this is the idea of, in general, this releasing from the space of the constriction to the space of expansiveness, and that's done through a cry, the cry of birth. And in general, we start the year we start the year with this sound, because one of the, when a child is born, let's say for using this image, when a child is born, if God forbid a child is born and doesn't cry, so the first thing that they do is that they give a little spank to the baby because they want the baby to cry. Because crying, the idea of vibration, of movement, of tnuah, represents life. Silence, which represents the state within the womb, is when the child is within the womb, is a place of silence. That's why after 120, a person enters a different world where there's no longer movement. It's called as Yordei Duma, the world of Duma, of silence. And the angel of death is called Duma, silence, because life represents movement and vibration and expression. So the idea of beginning the new year is we're going from the place of, if we're the baby itself, so to speak, we're both the mother and the babies in this analogy. We're both the one that's giving birth and both the one that's birthing, because we're giving birth to ourselves, that we give birth to our own selves. So in the image of us giving birth, we're crying of the pain, of the symptoms, of the contractions, in order to finally release the new me, and saying that I've gone through all this in my life, and this year I want to change, I want to be different this year. And there's some pain in that process. There's some constriction in that process of recognizing that I'm not living up to my potential, and the yearning to live up to my potential, and trying to break through all the doubts and uncertainties that don't let me become my full potential. So that's the first process of the 99 sounds of the shofar. And finally, the sound of the 100th sound is a triumphant sound, is like I'm birthed, I'm born. I'm born again into this new year, and I birth myself, obviously with the strength, the koach, the power of the Creator, that I'm birthing myself into this new reality, to the new potential of myself that's going to be revealed in this world. And that's the sound of the 100th sound of the blow. In terms of us being the baby that's actually being born, we're going from a place of silence, where we're the quietness of self, because our self is not yet being expressed. We're sitting as sort of like in this symptom state, contracted space, that we're not yet fully expressing our full potential. And in comparison to our potential that could be born into the next year, the year that we just live now is silent. I mean, it's not teeming with life and teeming with vibration and energy. So the process of beginning the new year is with this process of the expression, the exhaling ourselves into this coming year, to say that now we're present, and we're going to be fully alive and vibrant, not Duma, not silent. We're going to be fully expressive in this coming year. That's the birth of the self within the final blast of the triumphant sound of the final sound of the shofar.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Rav Pinson's podcast. To submit questions or to sponsor a future episode, please email ravpinsonpodcast@gmail.com. The link is in the description below. To learn more from Rav Pinson about Rosh Hashanah, you can find his book on Amazon entitled A Call to Majesty, The Mysteries of Shofar and Rosh Hashanah.